Have you ever reached a point in your life where you were tired? Not just physically tired, but tired internally, tired of going back to the same place, tired of the same thinking, the same struggle, and you made a decision, a real one, not emotional, not temporary, but intentional. You say to yourself, I am done with this. And for a moment, you meant it. You felt clear, you felt strong, you felt like something finally shifted, like you broke through something, like this time it would actually be different. But then time passed, and slowly, without you even realizing it at first, the same thoughts started coming back, the same pull, the same internal conversation, the same leaning toward what you already decided to leave behind. And before anything even happened externally, you could already feel internally like something was drawing you back. And then you ended up there again. Same place, same pattern, same outcome. And now it's not just frustrating, it's confusing. Because now you are asking yourself, why does this keep happening? I know better. I have heard truth. I have prayed about this. So why does it keep repeating? Now stay with me, because this is where most people misunderstand what's actually happening in their lives. Most people think that their problem is what they do, so they just focus on behavior. They try to stop actions, they try to control outcomes. If I can just stop doing this, if I can just avoid this, if I can just try harder, then things will change. But the reality is, your life is not sustained by what you do occasionally. It is sustained by what you believe consistently. And belief is formed in your thinking. Have you ever noticed how fast your mind can take you somewhere? One thought, and suddenly you're remembering something, replaying something, feeling something again. Nothing has happened yet, but internally, everything has shifted. You are already feeling it, you're already imagining it, you're already moving toward it internally. Before your actions change, your thinking already has. This is where it begins. Not big, not dramatic, not obvious, small, quiet. A thought enters, and when it first comes, you notice it, but you don't reject it. You don't confront it. You don't question it. You let it sit. And because you let it sit, it returns. Some thoughts don't just pass, they stay. And not just briefly, they stay long enough to become familiar. And once something becomes familiar, you stop reacting to it. You stop questioning it. You start making space for it. Think about that. How many thoughts have you stopped questioning? How many things once felt wrong but now feel normal? That didn't happen overnight. That happened because something stayed long enough to become accepted. Now, listen carefully. The Bible says in 2 Corinthians 10, verse 5, bring into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ. Every thought, not some, every. That means thoughts are not neutral, they are not harmless, they are not insignificant. Every thought is leading somewhere. Every thought is shaping something. And if it is not examined, it remains. Now, watch this. It says, bring into captivity. That means a thought should not be left alone. It should not just be accepted. It should not just be entertained. It should not just sit there. It must be confronted. It must be questioned. It must be brought under authority, because if it is not, it will stay. Now, let's slow it down even more. How many thoughts have you ever questioned? Thoughts about yourself, thoughts about your future, thoughts about your identity. I'm not good enough. I always mess things up. I will never change. Where did those come from? And more importantly, why did you believe them? Because here's what happens: a thought enters, and instead of examining it, you agree with it. And the moment you agree with it, it stops just being a thought and it starts becoming a belief. And once something becomes a belief, it it doesn't just sit in your mind. It begins to reshape your identity. And that is where strongholds are formed. When something becomes a belief, it doesn't just stay in your mind. It begins to shape how you see yourself. And once it shapes how you see yourself, it begins to shape how you live. That is where a stronghold is formed. Not just a thought, not just an idea, but something that has taken root inside of you. A stronghold is not something you hear once. It's something you hear again and again and again, until eventually it sounds like your own voice. And this is where it becomes dangerous, because now you're not just hearing something, you are thinking from it. It becomes your internal voice. That voice that says, you are not good enough. You always mess things up. This is just who you are. And because it sounds like you don't question it. You trust it. Think about that. The most influential voice in your life is the one inside your own mind. Not what people say to you, not what you hear occasionally, but what you say to yourself consistently. And over time, that internal voice begins to define you. This is just how I am. I've always struggled with this. I don't think I'll ever change. See, these are not observations. Those are agreements. And once something becomes your identity, you stop fighting it, because you don't fight what you believe you are. You live from it. Now let's slow this down, because this doesn't just happen instantly. It happens gradually. A thought enters, you entertain it, you return to it, you repeat it, you begin to believe in it. And once you believe in it, it becomes a part of how you see yourself. And once it becomes how you see yourself, it begins to influence everything else: your decisions, your reactions, your expectations, even your limits. The Bible says in Proverbs 23 verse 7, for as he thinketh in his mind, so is he. Not as he tries, not as he wants, not as he wishes, but as he thinks. That means your life will always move in the direction of your thinking. Even if you try to go another way, you will eventually return to what you believe. And this is where it becomes dangerous, because you don't feel controlled, you feel normal. That's how strongholds work. They don't feel like bondage, they feel like identity. You don't wake up thinking, I'm being controlled right now. No. You wake up thinking, this is just me. And that's why it's so hard to break, because you're not trying to remove something external. You're trying to separate from something you actually believe it's you. Now, let's make this real. A stronghold doesn't just show up in big moments, it shows up in small, consistent patterns. You hesitate because you believe you're not capable. You see, you withdraw because you expect rejection. You repeat mistakes because you don't believe you can change. And every time it happens, it reinforces the belief. You fail, and the thought says, see, I told you. You hesitate, and the thought says, that's just who you are. And now the cycle continues because what you believe, you reinforce. And this is where we begin to see something that most people don't realize. You're not just dealing with thoughts, you are dealing with agreement. And agreement is what gives a thought power to remain. Because a thought can enter and leave, a thought can come and pass. You see, but the moment you agree with it, it stays. And once it stays, it begins to build something in you. You're not just dealing with thoughts, you are dealing with agreement because a thought by itself does not have the power to stay. Yes, it can come and it can go, but the moment you agree with it, you give it permission to remain. Now, watch this carefully. Agreement is not always loud, it's not always spoken, it's not always obvious. Sometimes agreement is quiet. It sounds like maybe this is just who I am. Maybe I'll always struggle with this. It's not that serious. I'll deal with this later. That's agreement. It doesn't feel like agreement, but it is. Because you didn't reject it, you accepted it. Let this sit. You cannot cast out what you keep agreeing with. Are you hearing this? You cannot cast out what you keep agreeing with, because agreement is what gives something permission to stay in your life. You're trying to fight something, you're trying to resist it, you're trying to pray it away, but at the same time, you're still agreeing with it. And that creates conflict because outwardly you are resisting, but inwardly you are reinforcing. And what you reinforce internally will always overpower what you resist externally. Let's make this real right now. Let's make this real. A thought says you're not good enough. If you reject it, it passes. If you entertain it, it returns. If you agree with it, it stays. Another thought says you'll never change. If you question it, it weakens. If you ignore it, it lingers. If you agree with it, it becomes truth to you. And once it becomes truth to you, you begin to live from it. Now, listen to this. The Bible says in Matthew 18, verse 19, if two of you shall agree on earth, it shall be done. Watch that carefully. Agreement establishes something. When two come into agreement, something is confirmed, something is established, something begins to take form. So if agreement with truth produces life, then agreement with the wrong thing also produces something. And you don't need two people. You and your thoughts are in agreement. Think about that. Every day you are agreeing with something. Thoughts about yourself, thoughts about your future, thoughts about your identity. And whatever you keep agreeing with, you begin to establish in your life. And this is why some things don't leave. not because they are too strong, not because they are too supported. You are supporting what you're trying to remove. You are feeding what you're trying to starve. You are reinforcing what you're trying to break. And this is why people stay stuck. Not because they don't want to change, but because they haven't broken the agreement. They pray but still think the same. They resist but still believe the same. And as long as belief stays, that cycle stays. Because the real battle is not just what you do, it's what you agree with. And until that agreement is broken, nothing else will fully change. So now the question becomes, if agreement is what allows it to stay, then how do you break it? How do you undo what has already taken root? How do you separate from something that feels like you? You see, that's where transformation begins. If agreement is what allowed it to stay, how do you break it? Because this is not just about removing something, it's about undoing something that has already taken root. And anything that has taken root cannot be removed casually. You don't just decide it's gone when it has been reinforced over time. You don't just feel different and everything changes, because this was built gradually and it must be undone intentionally. And this is where many people miss it. They try to remove the outcome instead of addressing the root. They try to stop the behavior without changing the belief. But behavior follows belief every time. So if the belief remains, the behavior will return. Even if you suppress it for a while, even if you avoid it temporarily, even if you resist it for a season, if belief is still there, the cycle is still alive. Now, listen carefully. The Bible says in Romans 12, verse 2, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Notice that it doesn't say be transformed by trying harder. It doesn't say be transformed by effort. It says be transformed by the renewing of your mind. That means transformation does not start with behavior. It starts with thinking. And renewal means replacing. It means something old is being removed and something new is being established. This is where we get practical, because renewal is not automatic, it is intentional. You begin to notice what you've been agreeing with. You see, you begin to recognize what has been repeating in your mind. And instead of letting it sit, you confront it. You don't ignore it, you challenge it. The thought says you'll never change. You don't sit with it, you don't entertain it, you don't agree with it. You confront it right there. Because here's the reality: you cannot remove a thought without replacing it. If you try to empty your mind, it will fill again. See, so the goal is not removal alone, it is replacement. You replace the lie with the truth. You replace what you believed with what is actually true. And at first it won't feel natural because you've lived with the old thought for so long and the new one feels unfamiliar. But remember, familiarity is what gave the old thought power. So repetition is what will establish the new one. This is not a one-time moment. This is a daily process. Thought comes, you examine it. If it doesn't align, you reject it. Then you replace it with truth. And you do that again and again and again until the new thought becomes familiar. See, and once it becomes familiar, it begins to feel natural. And once it feels natural, it begins to shape your life. This is how the cycle breaks, not by force, but by replacement, not by trying harder, but by thinking differently, not by fighting outside, but by changing the inside. So now I want you to think about this. What have you been agreeing with? What have you accepted that you were never supposed to accept? What has been repeating in your mind that you stopped questioning? Because whatever you keep agreeing with, you are allowing to remain. And whatever remains will eventually produce something in your life. Some thoughts don't just pass, they take root. And once they take root, they begin to shape your life. If you don't break what has taken root, it will continue to produce what you've been trying to escape.